Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Chris, and I am your host as well as the marketing manager over here at EBS Associates. Today's webinar is presented in partnership with Avalara Sales Tax Automation to show off the new and improved features in QuickBooks Desktop 2019. Our subject matter expert, Jakob Mann from EBS Associates, has a full agenda for us today, so I will try to keep my introduction as short as possible. Really quickly, for those of you who do not know who EBS Associates is, we're a full-service professional accounting company located in Portland, Oregon. We staff over 40 full-time bookkeepers, consultants, and software specialists, and we provide both services and products related to financial accounting, QuickBooks, and many other small business software solutions. Our product specialists are here every day free of charge to answer your questions about QuickBooks products, third-party integrations, and our general bookkeeping and accounting services. In case you missed our last webinar, we discussed sales tax and the Wayfair South Dakota court trial and the impact the verdict will have on small businesses. Because this is such an important topic, I've asked Matt Hammond from Avalara to come back and chat briefly about the court case and how to stay compliant with sales tax. So Matt, I'm going to pass the controls over to you, and the virtual floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Give me 1 second here. We'll go ahead and share a screen. Let me know when you can see everything, and we'll go ahead and get started. So we should be good right here. All right, perfect. Well, thank you for the introduction, and we'll talk real quickly just about what's going on in the sales tax world. Everything was really flipped on its head in the past 90 days, and it means a lot now to, with the new court case and the ruling, to have to monitor sales everywhere. So that's what we've talked a lot about with the small to medium-sized businesses. So I'm going to walk through a couple things, and then we'll send over information. If you have any questions after that are just sales tax related or life in general, and sales tax comes up, we'll definitely be able to help and have a conversation. So, talking about why sales tax management is so hard is you have so many different things that are in place, right? You have content changes, you have rates, rules, boundaries, all kinds of information that is changing on a month-to-month, year-to-year, day-to-day basis. So with all the content things that are out there as far as keeping records and the filings, it can be very challenging. And then let's assume you have multiple systems in play. You have an e-commerce shopping cart. You also have QuickBooks Online or desktop on the back end, and then you also have a custom platform. So you have many different processes that are going to be in place across multiple systems where sales tax is going to have to be accurate, it's going to have to be up to date, and it needs to be real time. Because if somebody's checking out on a website or you're invoicing out of QuickBooks every day, you need to make sure you have the right rates, rules, boundaries, and all of that up to date. So Wayfair versus South Dakota, an economic nexus. That's been the word I've said more over the phone in the past 90 days than I had ever envisioned, but economic nexus. So what does it mean? Essentially, in the past, prior to this ruling, you only had to get registered to collect or remit sales tax when you had a physical presence. You had boots on the ground, you had inventory, you had a reason to collect tax because you physically were on ground or had business in that state. So Wayfair South Dakota essentially challenged that, and the state won. They're saying that now, if you don't ever go in that state, for example, you're in the state of Florida, but you do $100,000 a year in sales in Colorado, you have over 200 transactions in a certain state, if you never go there and you're just selling online, they're going to require you to potentially get registered to collect or remit sales tax. And the reason that is, everyone, is if you think back 25 years ago to how people were buying products, everything has changed. You were going into a store. Now you can buy almost anything online. So the way people purchase products has changed, and the way the rules for sales tax have also changed. So for the most part, most states are deeming that if you do $100,000 in revenue from either taxable, some states are non-taxable, or 200 or more transactions in that particular state, then you may have to get registered to collect or remit sales tax moving forward. So what I said a second ago is really coming true. Small to medium-sized businesses have to monitor where they sell everywhere. Run reports, keep an eye on your total sales in all states. There's only 46 states that collect tax or charge tax. Those are the ones we typically start the most with. But Avalara, as a partner with EBS and the industry leader in sales tax automation, we can help determine where you have obligations to collect tax. We can help get you registered. We have a seamless plugin for QuickBooks to calculate the tax, as well as determining if what you're selling is or is not in fact taxable. So Economic nexus is very challenging, and it's making everybody have to have a close eye on where they're selling, what products and services they're doing, keeping up with taxability, and monitoring all the rates, rules, and boundaries on an ongoing basis. So one thing that we're going to talk about just real quickly, and then we'll turn it back over, is what's the difference between the native functionality in QuickBooks and in every other accounting package and what Avalara does. So most people are under the impression that zip codes are how you calculate sales tax, and I'll be one of the first folks that you may hear it from, but zip codes aren't meant to calculate sales tax. They're more so to help the mailman deliver mail. So if you think about, you have multiple taxing jurisdictions in a zip code. Zip codes are going to vary. The rates are going to vary. You can have, you can really think that you're doing it properly with a zip +9, but it's not always going to be accurate. It can lead to mistakes. It can make you think you're doing it right. And this next slide, which is one of my favorites, will give you a great reason and a great logic behind why zip codes aren't the right tool for the job. So this is a suburb, residential neighborhood in Commerce City, Colorado. It's the same neighborhood, the same street, the same zip code. All the houses in green have a tax rate of 4.75%. All the houses in blue have a tax rate of 9.25%. So that's almost a 5% delta from one side of the street to the next. So if you're just calculating sales tax via zip code, which is typically the standard functionality in most accounting packages, you may be doing it wrong. So zip codes aren't always accurate, and you could potentially do 1,000 orders a month and be off for 5%. That 5% could kill you if you have to go back to that particular person and ask for that tax. The state, at the end of the day, they really don't care if you're charging 7%, 4%, 6%, but if the rate that they owe or that you're having to remit to is 9%, they want that 9%. So overcharging and undercollecting and vice versa can be very, very challenging. So this is why zip codes aren't really the right tool for the job. And while using Avalara and our plugin for QuickBooks actually does a rooftop level calculation, we plug right in, we have a seamless integration to calculate the tax and also determine if each individual line item is actually taxable. So this is just a great example and what it looks like visually for how zip codes aren't everything you need when it comes to calculating sales tax. Avalara, I mentioned, partners with EBS. We have a seamless integration. We work with Enterprise Pro, Premier, as well as online. We are the industry leader in sales tax automation. Just by being a partner, we have promotions. We can definitely help you out. It's worth a conversation to talk about sales tax because it's such a challenging subject. It is so difficult. It's always changing. And we have a plugin that's very seamless and can get it up and running and live in an hour on a phone call, depending on the complexity of your sales tax needs. So that's really it from a high level as far as sales tax and how we partner with EBS, and I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. All right. So if you guys would like to learn more about Avalara, I'm going to send some more information in a follow-up email after the webinar, or you can always call our main office line or me directly, and I can get you over to the right person. Let's go to the agenda here. So today we will be covering an overview of the new features in QuickBooks 2019, also a live demonstration of these features, and Jacob will discuss the practical uses of the features and who they were designed for. And finally, we will show you which versions of QuickBooks support the new features. Most of the new features you're going to see today work in Pro, Premier, and Enterprise, so all versions, but there are a few advanced inventory features only available in the Enterprise Platinum version. That includes the advanced inventory module. As always, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I will do my best to answer the questions as they come up, or I will bring them up during the presentation, and there will also be a Q&A at the very end. If you'd like to follow along with Jacob, you can find a copy of the slides in the handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Jakob Mann. Jacob, take it away, buddy.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, and welcome again to our webinar. Today, we're going to demonstrate some of the new features for QuickBooks Desktop 2019. Just a quick little bit about me. My name is, again, Jacob. I've been with EBS Associates on the technical team for about a year now, and before that, I worked a couple of years on the enterprise support lines for Intuit, fielding questions and helping people get those enterprise issues fixed. We've got a few interesting features added to QuickBooks 2019 this year that we've seen folks asking about for a while. So you may be pleasantly surprised to find that something you've been looking for is finally here. The first few features that we're going to take a look at today are some improvements to the AR and AP workflows. Hopefully, these are going to help you clear up some annoyances that you may have been seeing. So back on the Intuit support lines, one issue that we saw fairly frequently would be a user entering a check into QuickBooks to pay a bill. And while the vendor balance would be correct, the bill and the check were still showing as open on OpenAP reports. So what happened? In most cases, this would be a user who wasn't familiar with using the Pay Bills window and wrote the check using the Write Check screen instead, meaning that there was really nothing linking the bill and the check that paid it together. Then you would have had to either delete that check and re-enter it through Pay Bills, or create a new bill payment using that check as the credit. Either way, it's extra steps and cleanup that could be avoided if the user had known that they should just enter this through the Pay Bills window. Well, now, when we try to enter a check written to a vendor that we have bills open with, we'll see this prompt that warns us and allows us to jump to the Pay Bills window pre-filtered for that vendor. If you do need to write a regular check to that vendor instead, you can also choose to proceed, but the warning is intended to reduce the amount of these unlinked bill payments that come up. And we can see that in action if we come in here to the Write Checks window. We'll select a vendor that I know we have some open bills with, and we get this pop-up. It tells us we have unpaid bills with this vendor and tells us we should use the Pay Bills window if we're intending to pay one of these bills. It lists our open bills with the vendor, shows us the due date, the amount due, and the reference number. So we can tell pretty quickly if the thing we're writing a check for is actually a bill that needs to be paid through that window. If it's not, we can click the Write Your Check button to go in and write a check to the vendor as normal. If we do want to pay one of these bills, we'll click the Go to Pay Bills button, and it'll take us straight to that Pay Bills window for this vendor. We can see all the same bills we just had on the pop-up, select the bill we want, and pay it the way QuickBooks expects us to. So this should hopefully help save a little confusion on reports and time needed to fix that. The next change we'll look at is on the AR side of things. You may have encountered times where you've got a credit for one job under a customer, but you need to apply it to an invoice for another job or for the parent customer. This has meant the manual entry of a pair of journal entries to move the credit to the appropriate job, after which you could finally apply it as you intended. This has created extra manual steps, which has meant wasted time and more opportunities for error. Now in 2019, you'll be able to see all the credits that are available from anywhere under the parent customer when choosing a credit on a payment. If you want to use a credit that's on another job, you'll be able to select it, and you'll just need to click through a warning pop-up to apply it. Once you do this, QuickBooks takes care of the journal entries automatically on the back end, moving the credit to where you need to apply it. And what that looks like, if we go into the Receive Payments window here, we're going to select a customer here that we've got marked off, and we can see they've got two jobs. Well, they've got a lot of jobs, but we've marked two jobs here. We've got the Big City Store and Littleton Store. We're going to look at the Big City Store, and we've got this invoice that we need to pay. And we know they've got a credit. We're just not sure exactly which job it's under. So we're going to go ahead and go to the Discounts and Credits window. And now we see we've got a new column here for Customer Job. And if we hover over that, it shows us which job that this credit is actually coming from. We can go ahead and select that credit, make sure that the amount to apply is correct, and we're going to hit Done. We get this new pop-up here, Confirm Transfer. So QuickBooks tells us that we're going to transfer credits from one job to another, and we can undo this transfer only by making general journal entries. So what it's doing is on the back end, it's taking care of that same pair of journal entries that we would have done before. It's just doing it all automatically for us. We're going to go ahead and click yes to continue. We see the credits have been applied, and we're going to save this payment. If we go into our Customer Center, we can look at those two jobs and see how this is actually done on the back end by QuickBooks. On the Big City store, we've got a general journal entry here that moves amounts out of accounts receivable into this account for credit transfer that QuickBooks sets up for this purpose. And there's going to be one on the Littleton store that does just the opposite. It's going to move it out of the Littleton accounts receivable and into Big City Store's accounts receivable. So it's a very easy way to take care of these, what was usually a long-winded process before. You might have to sit there and try to remember which side is the debit, which side is the credit. Now it's a lot simpler. QuickBooks will just take care of all that for us on the back end. If you need to undo that, you'll either reverse those journal entries or go in and delete the pair. And let's see. Our next feature is inventory items getting a boost. So we've got this inactive inventory item filter on reports now. On the 3 inventory evaluation reports, this filter has a quick toggle on the report toolbar that's going to include or exclude inactive inventory items. If you have any inactive inventory items that still have a quantity and value, maybe it's something you've got in your warehouse, but you're not currently selling it, so you've inactivated it so no one uses it, then we'll be able to get a much clearer picture of what the true value of your inventory is. So if we look at our items list here, we've got 2 inactive inventory items, these drills and these pedestals, and they've both got some quantity and value to them. Now previously, what we could have done is figured out the value of both of these inactive inventory items, added it all up, added that to the value on the reports. It could get time consuming and messy, especially if you have a lot of inactive items. This new feature is going to make it a lot easier to get a look at this. So again, that's going to be the inventory evaluation summary report, inventory evaluation summary by site if you're using advanced inventory and you have the sites feature turned on, or the inventory evaluation detail report. We come here, change this to all dates. We're going to look down at the bottom and we've got a total asset value right now of about $127,000. We're going to turn on our inactive inventory items, and suddenly that goes up to $132,000. So it's a pretty significant difference there. And we wouldn't have even really known that if we hadn't had this filter to quickly look at all the inventory, whether it's active or inactive. So hopefully this should really help us to get a good idea of what the true value of inventory is without a lot of manual calculation. Another new feature, this one in accounts receivable, is a new invoice status tracker. This looks like it's going to be the most useful if you're sending out invoices directly through QuickBooks. On any saved invoice, in the upper left, you'll see a link to See History. If you sent the invoice through QuickBooks, you'll get to see when it was created and when it was sent, and the first and last times it was viewed. If the invoice has been paid, you'll see that here as well. And if that payment went to undeposited funds, you'll also see when it was deposited. This could be pretty useful as is for checking the status of individual invoices. I think it could be even more useful in the future if we can get some reports based on these statuses, such as maybe open invoices that have been sent but not viewed. It's definitely going to be one of my first suggestions submitted for this version to make an already useful looking feature even more useful. So if we come into our customers here and we're going to open up one of these invoices, we've got the See History link right up here. We can click on that and we'll get this little pop-up and we can see a little bit of information about the life cycle of this invoice so far. We can see when it was created, when it was emailed, when it was first and last viewed by the customer. But if we look up in these colored bubbles here, we see paid and deposited aren't yet filled in. So this invoice needs to still be paid and still be deposited. We'll go in and receive a payment for this invoice. And we come back, the invoice is paid, and we look at the history, and we can now see exactly how much we received and when for that payment. If we then go and deposit that payment, we will see the date that it was deposited. So it's a really nice way to kind of just see from beginning to end what's going on with an invoice, where in the process it's all at. And as I said, I think this could be even more useful in the future if we can get some reports that are going to kind of show us just a whole list of invoices that maybe have the sent status but not the viewed status yet. Best way to ask into it for something like that is through the product suggestion window. If you're not familiar with that, that can be found here under the help menu, send feedback online, product suggestion. You can just come in here and type up a little bit about what features you're hoping for them to add to QuickBooks and why it's important for your business. Send that off, and somebody there will take a look and see what we can do about maybe getting that in a future version. I know that they do actually read through those product suggestions and categorize them by feasibility. I used to work on a team that actually helped process through some of those. So our next feature, sales order fulfillment worksheet. So we've got a pair of features actually to look at here before we check out some of the new product features. These are going to be exclusive to Enterprise with Advanced Inventory. So this is going to mean you need the Platinum Edition. So these are a pair of worksheets to streamline your receiving of purchase orders and your fulfillment of sales orders. And both of these can be turned on in the Site Operations tab of the Advanced Inventory settings. So remember, you will have to be logged in as admin in single user mode to do that. So the newly revamped sales order fulfillment worksheet looks a lot like the income or bill trackers to me. And it's designed to assist in tracking a pick, pack, ship workflow as you fulfill your sales orders in QuickBooks. From the dashboard, you'll choose Open Sales Orders to send for picking, where you can either print a list or send it to the QuickBooks Desktop Warehouse app on an Android phone or an MC40 barcode scanner. Now, we did do a video on those barcode scanners in the Android app and their integration with QuickBooks last year. So if you need some further information on those, be sure to check out that video.
And Jacob, I'll send that video out to everyone in the follow-up email.
Perfect. There you go. Chris on top of things for you folks. As orders are picked, the status can be updated either in the worksheet once a paper pick list is returned or live via the app. Once the pick list is updated, the update can be pushed to the sales order itself, moving it to a picked status on the dashboard. Picked orders can then be sent for packing in much the same way, with the difference that you'll also be able to enter some information about the package or packages, like the dimension and weight. Packed orders, similarly, go back to the dashboard with a packed status, and once they've been shipped out, that status can be updated to shipped in the worksheet to complete the process. So that's found here under the Customers menu, the Sales Order Fulfillment Worksheet. Again, you will have to turn that on under the Advanced Inventory settings first. That's under Edit, Preferences, Items and Inventory. Your Advanced Inventory settings are here, and it's the Site Operations tab. This is also where you'll manage the connection with Android phones or MC40 barcode scanners. And if we open up the Sales Order Worksheet, we see a list of all our sales orders with a few filters up here to kind of narrow things down if we've got a lot to look at. We've got these brightly colored category buttons up here that really help us to just quickly see at a glance what is in what status. So let's take one of these sales orders and just walk through this process real quick. We've got sales order 8801 and it's currently open. We're going to go ahead and send this order for picking. And we're going to check and make sure that everything looks good here on the pick list screen. And we'll go ahead and hit next to send it. Now we can add a note here for our warehouse user who's going to be picking these items. Let's say that this is a rush order, and we are going to send ASAP. And we're going to choose a warehouse picker to assign this to. So warehouse pickers are created as vendors under your vendor list. And what you're going to do is give them a user type of a vendor type of warehouse user. And QuickBooks will create that vendor type when you turn on these features. So let's select our warehouse picker here. If you're using the app, you'd have the option to send it to the app. We're not connected up to that for this demonstration, so we're just going to print a pick list. And we won't actually print here. We'll save a little paper. But it tells us the pick list was created. And to update the quantities to update the sales order from the pick tab after the items are picked. So we'll hit OK. And here's that pick tab. When we go over here, we see that the sales order is showing as sent for pick. Now, if you are using the app, you will get a little notification update sort of icon right here that'll tell you when sales orders have been updated from the app side of things so that you know. Otherwise, of course, if you're using paper pick lists, you're just going to wait until you get that paper list back. We're going to go ahead and view the pick list here. Now, if you're using the serial numbers feature, you'll enter serial numbers here. If you're using bins, you'll confirm the bin that things are going to. And we'll just go ahead and update this quantity. We're going to update the sales order. And if you forget to put in serial numbers, it asks us, do you still want to update it? So let's go ahead and put one in just so we've got something there. Now when we update, no warning. It tells us the sales order is updated, and if all the items are picked or partially picked, we can now send it off for packing from the dashboard. So if we go back to that dashboard, we find our sales order here. We didn't need to open it. We see that the status is picked. So we're going to send it off for packing now, and this is going to be very similar. With the packing, you can either assign it to one of the warehouse users again, or you can leave it unassigned for just whoever's available when they get to this order. We'll go ahead and leave it unassigned for now. We're going to print our packing slip, and it tells us to update the sales order from the pack tab when we know that the items are packed. So again, if we were using the app, we'd get a little update here when there was new information received from the app. Otherwise, we'll just go in here and manually update it. So it's sent for pack. We're going to view the packing list, going to update the packed quantity, and update the sales order. And it warns us here, this packing list has no packages. So this is another major difference between the pick and pack tabs. You've got this button down here to add a package, and this will let you put in some information about the packages that you're packing up and shipping out. You can put in the weight, the dimensions. If you put in a package and then they find that maybe later they need to repack things and combine two small packages into a big box, you can go ahead and delete the old package from there. We've got our package added in. We're going to update the sales order, and it lets us know that it's been updated, and when we're ready, we can ship it from the dashboard. So we'll come over to the dashboard here. We've just confirmed that this order has gone out to our shipping team and been picked up by our shipper. So we're going to go ahead and mark this as shipped. Tells us the sales order was shipped and updates it to have this nice bright green shipped label for us. So it's a really nice way to just sort of keep track of where in this process each thing is. Should be very useful for folks who are doing a lot of shipping out of packages, need to track things in various states. I think it's going to be very helpful. So on the receiving side of things, we have a new purchase order management worksheet as well. And this allows you to, again, print or send receive lists to your warehouse in much the same way as the sales order worksheet. You can also send these as unassigned, so they can be self-assigned by whoever is available when that order comes in. They can be updated by the app if you're using that, or by hand when paper receive lists are returned. And after updating the quantity, the worksheet allows you to create a bill or item receipt as needed to reflect the goods you've received. Let's take a look at that one. That's going to be found under the Vendors menu, Purchase Order Management Worksheet. So we've got our purchase orders here that are ready to receive. We're going to select a site that we're receiving them at. So we're receiving that at our Atlanta warehouse. Check it off, print and receive. And we can either, again, leave this unassigned or assign it to a particular picker. We'll assign this one to warehouse picker 2 and print. And it tells us once receiving is done, we can update the quantities. So that's done here on the PO Progress tab. We see that the status is sent for receiving. We're going to come over to our actions and view the receive list. And again, this would update from the app, but since we're doing it manually, we'll just go ahead and type in our received quantities here. Now, if you're using serial numbers, you can type those in here. And if you're using the bins feature, you'll select bins for these items to go into. So when you're done, rather than just the one update sales order button that the sales order worksheet has, we've got two options. We can create a bill if we've already gotten a bill from the vendor for these items, or we can create just an item receipt if we're still waiting on the bill from the vendor, but we do want to reflect that these items are now in inventory. Let's go ahead and create an item receipt here, and we get the option to either just close out or go and view the item receipt that we've just created. So I think both of these features are going to be really helpful for warehouse management, especially for businesses that want to try to run as few software applications as possible. This might be a great way to take care of those processes from within QuickBooks. Depending on how you do things, you might want to get these connected with some scanners or Android devices for the app to really get the most out of them. So that's about what we know so far in terms of purely workflow features. On the more technical or administrative side of things, we've got a couple of new program features that look pretty interesting as well. First up is a change that'll make it easier to manage permissions for your users, especially if you want to avoid payroll transactions being visible to anyone who shouldn't see them. In the Users and Roles screen, roles whose permissions grant a user access to certain avenues that can show them all transactions will be marked with an asterisk. When editing or creating a role, specific permissions that allow this will be marked with 2 asterisks. So using these as a guide, you can edit your roles accordingly to really make sure that users who shouldn't see specific transactions, commonly people are trying to lock folks out of payroll, have no way to view them. So that's going to be done under your Users and Roles screen, same as setting up a user for the first time. You'll be logged in as admin. You'll come to Company, Users, set up Users and Roles. You're going to go ahead and re-enter your admin password here. Now we see that we've got this user, Jake, and he's got an asterisk next to his name. QuickBooks tells us that that means these users and roles have unrestricted access to view all transactions, including payroll info. So something in their permissions is letting them get to any transaction they want instead of just the ones that their permission should allow. So we see he's only got this test role here, and that is also marked with an asterisk. So that's going to mean that that's the role that's giving him that unrestricted permission. If we come over to the Role List tab, we're going to go down to our test role, and we're going to edit it to see what's going on and change this. So we see with the double asterisks, these areas give users unrestricted access to view all transactions. So there's something in Company that could do that, and something in Reports. And they've got partial permissions in both areas, so we need to investigate a little deeper. We'll pull open Reports here, and we see that they don't have permission to any of the areas in Reports that can do this. That's going to be the Custom Transaction Detail, the Company and Financial Detail, and the Accountant and Taxes Detail. So if they've got any of those, they can use those reports to view transactions that you may not want them to. In this case, that's not what's doing it. So we'll scroll up here and check under Company. That's the other area that's marked with 2 asterisks. And we see that this user has permission to find all transactions. Yet another way that they could potentially access data you don't want them to. So we're going to go ahead and turn off that permission. When we hit OK here, we'll see that it takes the asterisk off of test role, because now there are no permissions on test role that are giving that unfettered access. If we go back to the user list, test role also has its asterisk gone here so we can see that it's good to go. We do still have an asterisk on Jake. What this seems to be is that the asterisk on names themselves don't necessarily update until you close and reopen that window. So if we go back in there, now Jake's asterisk is gone. So we know for sure that they only have access to things that their permission should let them get to. QuickBooks 2019 also has another mode for the condensed data option as a new feature. This is going to be pretty exciting. So this one doesn't remove any transactions. Instead, it's going to remove the massive audit trail report that can build up in your company file. Now, if you're not familiar with that, the audit trail holds a record of every creation, change, and deletion of a transaction. So it can really get very big quickly. It's absolutely useful for looking things up to see who changed something in certain situations, but the size can quickly rack up. So what this new option is going to do is it's not going to remove any transactions like the old Condense would have. You can still use that if you need to, for example, slice out your 2016 year of data for your accountant to take a look at, something like that. You still got the option of using the classic Condense. But now this one's going to remove the audit trail report from your live file instead. And while it's doing that, it'll create you an archived copy of that company file that still has all the audit trail information as of the time you do that condense. You'll want to keep that archive copy somewhere safe in case you need to look at the old audit trail. Any changes you make in the live file will start being tracked in a fresh audit trail in that file. So it looks like there can be some pretty significant data savings using this depending on the file. I've seen percentages between 40 to 60% size reduction in some of my tests. The trade-off that you have to consider is whether it's worth not having immediate access to historical audit trail data because you'd have to track it down in the archive copy if needed. If your file's big enough that the performance suffers and you have many years of data, you might want to consider a new file altogether. But if you need to push through to the fiscal year for that to be feasible or anything like that, then this might help you get there without suffering through slower performance in the meantime. It could also be useful if you're trying to stay under the recommended file size limits like the 495, 500 megabyte or so for Pro. So we're not going to walk through this whole feature today, but I'm going to show you where you can find that. It's under the File menu here. We're going to go to Utilities, Condense Data, just like you went to if you were trying to do one of the old condenses. Now you've just got a new option on the first screen. You'll choose whether you want to use the classic condense that removes transactions or the new condense that's just pulling out that audit trail. QuickBooks will give you an estimate here of how much this is going to reduce your file size and what percentage of data savings that is. So it should be a good way to help get excessively large files under control, at least temporarily, until you can put a plan in place to kind of get things to a more stable point, so to speak. Another great new feature that's hopefully going to help save you a lot of time rather than data space is a new wizard for IIF imports. Now, this has been a long time coming. I don't think there's been much of an update to IIFs, at least on the user end, in quite some time. A lot of you may use IIFs to import from other sources, commonly a payroll process or something like that. And you probably know what a huge hassle it can be if anything goes wrong with the import. If you're not familiar with IIFs, they're a type of file that can be edited in Excel that are used to exchange information to and from QuickBooks files and other data sources. Well, now in 2019, we've got a new wizard that'll come up when you try to import an IIF. And this is going to check the import for errors and let you know what's wrong with anything it has a problem with. If you're an advanced user, you use IIFs all the time and you have all the wrinkles ironed out for your process, you can choose to skip the wizard. There's a button at the bottom. Mostly though, I do recommend giving this a try. It can really help to give some clarity to this process, especially if you're having any issues with it. As the file is importing, QuickBooks is checking it for errors. At the end, you're going to get one of two results screens. If everything went smoothly, you'll get a green check mark and everything should be good. If anything went wrong, there will be a yellow exclamation point. There's going to be a count of what imported and what failed, and you're going to have some further options. QuickBooks can create a new IIF for you containing the lines that were in error in some way. And it also has comments for you on just what is wrong with those lines. You can change or delete the errored lines as you need to right in that new IIF, and then redo the import with that as your new source so that you're only bringing in what failed the first time. This is going to make the process of importing IIFs go a lot more smoothly. And if there's anything wrong with the file you're importing, now you've got the specific errors in the IIF log to tell what to fix. From what we've seen, the messages are usually pretty nice and straightforward. And this should really help to take some of the pain out of IIF imports that we can sometimes run into. So again, this is a feature that's kind of a little long to demonstrate, but we'll go ahead and show you where to find that. So under the File menu, Utilities, you can import IIF files. And it's going to close all the open sub-windows to do that. So you can see here that it's going to tell you a little bit about what the wizard does. It's got a find out more link here so you can read some Intuit documentation on it if you'd like. And then from here we can start importing the IIF via the wizard, or we can come down here and click to import it without a review. Now again, that's not recommended, but if it's something that you know has been going into your file over and over without any real issues, and you're confident it's not going to cause any problems, it is an option. Okay, let's look at another new feature here. So our last thing to look at today is a feature that's probably going to be most helpful for single users of QuickBooks, which probably means mostly Pro and Premier users. If you've ever gotten a new computer and had to move your QuickBooks over to it, you know that sometimes it can be a time-consuming process, and you have to get your files into the right folders, and sometimes it's just a big hassle. Well, now there's this new feature that's going to let you transfer your installation of QuickBooks and your recently used data files from your old computer to your new one. It's pretty simple, and it seems to take a lot less time than doing it all manually. You will need a flash drive for this, and QuickBooks will let you know during the process how much free space it needs. But it looks to me like there's about a 200 megabyte base requirement, plus more for your company files, which will of course depend on their size. So you'll find that feature here again under the File menu in Utilities. We've got Move QuickBooks to another computer. We won't walk all the way through this, but there is one thing I want to show you in this process. QuickBooks is going to close all open windows as we do this. All right. So it tells us here we can, or what we're going to need for doing this. We're going to need our old computer. We're going to need our new computer, and it does have to be connected to the internet. And we're going to need a USB flash drive, and it'll tell you right here just how much storage you're going to need for that. So when you're ready to get started, the first thing it's going to have you do is enter a password. So this is not going to be your existing QuickBooks password, and this is not going to be changing it to a new password for your QuickBooks. What this is a temporary security password on these transfer files themselves. So if something goes wrong and you lose the flash drive somewhere between computer A and computer B, nobody else is going to be able to just stick that into their computer and get your stuff. It's all going to be protected behind this one-time password. So, quick recap. It looks like 2019's got a nice variety of new features for us. We've got the workflow improvement to writing checks for paying bills. We've got the ability to automatically transfer credits between jobs. We've got the change to invoices, that status tracker, which is going to let you get a lot more information about the life cycle of your invoices. We have that revamped sales order fulfillment worksheet and the new purchase order management worksheet for Enterprise Platinum. Both of those are going to go great with the Warehouse app if you have the capabilities for that. We've got the new Condense option that might save some of the size of your data file, hopefully help you either improve performance or get into a better position to create a nice fresh data file. And we've got the IIF import wizard to take some of the mystery out of those IIF imports. It looks like Intuit's given us a pretty solid package for the release here. And I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what else changes in the release patches as 2019 matures. It's probably a little too early to tell, but I'm wondering if we're seeing the groundwork being laid out for some even bigger features in future versions. I'm getting pretty excited about this one. Well, that is all we really have for new features today. Thank you all again so much for attending. If you have any questions, we'll be sticking around a while to field some of those. And if you think of any questions later that you're curious about, please feel free to email them to us. We'd be glad to answer some of the more common questions that we don't get to in some sort of Q&A corner on the blog next week or so. With that said, again, thank you all very much. And Chris, I'm going to turn it over back to you.
All right, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate that. I have seen that once before already, but I learned something new this time, so I'm definitely going to be watching the recording again. We have about 15 minutes left. If we want to, if you have questions, please go ahead and type them into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. Otherwise, we can take off early, or, if you wanted to see some more of those features, Jacob can do, another run through them. So if you have questions, please type them in the question box. And otherwise, thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you next time. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any questions. So I think we're going to go ahead and end the presentation. If you guys think of something after, the presentation's over, feel free to email me, and I will have Jacob get a hold of you, or, have somebody here get in touch with you. And you can expect a follow-up email from me with some more resources about 2019 and a little bit about our services. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time.